Steph and Aisha Curry are two of the most admired figures in the world, not just for their professional success, but for the beautiful family life they so often share with the world. To millions, they represent the perfect power couple, talented, loving, supportive, and grounded. Steph, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, has dazzled fans on the court for over a decade. Aisha, with her entrepreneurial spirit, culinary talent, and vibrant presence, has built a name for herself beyond being a basketball wife. Together, they've crafted a public image of joy, unity, and balance. Their children, especially their eldest daughter, Riley, have become household names in their own right. Riley first captured hearts at a young age with her adorable charisma during press conferences, quickly becoming a fan favorite. Her radiant smile, witty personality, and natural charm seemed to promise a bright future under the spotlight. To the outside world, the Curry family seemed untouchable, a beacon of what love and success could look like. They were the family that laughed together courtside, danced in the kitchen on social media, and shared sweet, wholesome glimpses of their private lives online. But as we know, even the most picture-perfect families have their hidden battles. And for the Currys, it was a quiet shift in Riley's behavior that would signal a storm no one expected. It began subtly, so subtly that it almost went unnoticed. Aisha was the first to notice the change. Riley, once bursting with energy and endless curiosity, began to withdraw. She wasn't the same little girl always asking questions, planning games, or sharing jokes around the dinner table. The sparkle in her eyes seemed dimmed. At first, Aisha chalked it up to adolescence. After all, Riley was getting older, and mood swings were a natural part of growing up. But this felt different. It wasn't just moodiness or teenage angst. It was a slow, steady silence creeping into their once joyful home. Riley started skipping out on things she used to love: drawing, baking with her mom, going to her dad's games. Her laughter, once contagious, became rare. Even the family dinners, which were once lively and full of stories, became quiet with Riley sitting silently, picking at her food and offering only short, distracted responses. Steph, ever the optimist, hoped it was just a phase. He organized bonding outings, taking Riley to the court to shoot hoops, something they'd always loved doing together. But no matter how many games they played or how much time they spent together, that familiar spark just wouldn't return. Behind closed doors, concern was growing. The Curry household, usually so full of life, began to feel a little heavier. Aisha, protective and deeply intuitive, tried to talk to Riley one-on-one. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she'd ask gently. "I'm fine, Mom," Riley would reply, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. That smile haunted Aisha. She knew her daughter too well to be fooled by surface-level answers. But how could she reach her? What was Riley going through that she felt she couldn't share? The more time passed, the more visible the change became. Riley started withdrawing from social media, stopped texting her friends as often, and lost interest in even the smallest joys that once excited her. Steph and Aisha were heartbroken. They prided themselves on being open, communicative parents. They'd always created a space where their children felt safe, supported, and loved. But now, despite their best efforts, they were hitting a wall. Then, one quiet evening, everything changed. The family was sitting together on the couch, watching a movie, something they hadn't done in a while. Aisha looked over at Riley and asked, as she had so many times before, "Honey, is everything okay?" This time, Riley didn't brush it off. She sat still, eyes glassy with emotion, and softly said, "I don't know. I just don't feel like myself anymore." That simple sentence hit like a ton of bricks. Aisha's heart sank. Steph turned to look at his daughter, his eyes full of concern. Riley continued, slowly opening up in a way she hadn't before. She talked about the pressure, the kind of pressure most kids her age could never understand. Being Steph Curry's daughter wasn't always fun. It was confusing, overwhelming, and often suffocating. She explained how it felt to live in the spotlight, to always be seen, always compared, always expected to smile. How every move she made seemed to matter more than it should, and how it felt like she was constantly trying to live up to something, or someone. "I feel like I always have to be perfect," she said. Like I can't just be me. It was a heartbreaking confession. Riley, the child who had lit up so many rooms and warmed so many hearts, was struggling under the weight of invisible expectations. Not because her family put them on her, but because the world did. Steph sat in silence, absorbing every word. For the first time, he realized that his fame, while a blessing, had cast a shadow over his daughter's young life. Not intentionally. Not through anything he did wrong. But through the sheer weight of being who he was, and who the world expected her to be. Aisha held Riley close, tears in her eyes, telling her over and over again how proud she was of her. How she didn't need to be anything other than who she already was. That she didn't need to live up to anyone, because she already mattered. In that moment, a shift happened, not in Riley, but in the family as a whole. They began to listen more deeply, protect more fiercely, and love more intentionally. Therapy soon followed. Open conversations, space to breathe, space to be. The Kuis pulled back from public appearances, prioritized family time even more, and gave Riley the room she needed to heal and rediscover herself on her own terms. Today, Riley is still growing, still finding her place in a world that once demanded too much of her too soon. But she's no longer doing it alone, and no longer pretending everything's fine. She's doing it honestly, with parents who now understand the weight she once carried silently. This story isn't just about the Kuis. It's about the hidden battles children can face, even in the most loving homes. It's a reminder that behind every smile is a story, and behind every child, famous or not, is a heart that deserves to be heard. So the next time we see Riley smiling in a family photo or cheering her dad on from the stands, let's remember the strength behind that smile, and the family that stood by her when she needed them the most. Behind the smiles, the fame, and the perfect family photos, a quiet storm was brewing. Riley Curry, the once bubbly little girl who charmed the world, was slowly disappearing into herself. And even her parents, Steph and Aisha Curry, didn't realize the depth of what was unfolding right before their eyes. It started with little things. Fewer words at the dinner table. Less laughter echoing through the hallways. At first, Steph thought it was just teenage moodiness. He'd seen the same withdrawal in others, but somehow, he missed it in his own daughter. It wasn't until Riley spoke up, with trembling words and eyes filled with pain, that the truth finally broke through the illusion. Those words hit Steph like a punch to the chest. He'd spent years in the spotlight, growing accustomed to the scrutiny, the pressure, the weight of perfection. But what he had learned to carry, his daughter had inherited without choice. "I had no idea," Steph whispered, eyes glistening. "Baby, I'm so sorry for not seeing this sooner." A heavy silence followed. One charged with the realization that while they had been shining for the world, Riley had been quietly fading. Aisha reached for her daughter's hand, feeling the subtle tremble. This wasn't just a phase. This was pain. Real, deep, and long hidden. She made a promise that day, not in grand words, but in quiet resolve. "This ends now. You are not alone, and you never will be again." That day became a turning point for the Curry family. The spotlight, once seen as a gift, was now revealed to be a double-edged sword. They finally understood, the glitz and glamour had a hidden cost. And Riley was paying it. What started as simple concern over her quietness had turned into something deeper, a wake-up call. It forced Steph and Aisha to re-examine everything. Their careers, their priorities, their definition of success. In the days that followed, everything changed. Steph, despite his hectic NBA schedule, carved out sacred time just for Riley. He brought her along to practices, not as a public figure, but as a daughter, his teammate in life. They laughed. They talked. They walked in silence. And in those moments, the spotlight didn't matter. What mattered was connection. Aisha, the nurturing force of the family, went a step further. She began researching counseling services, not just for Riley, but for all of them. The public eye hadn't just affected Riley, it had crept into every corner of their home. She paused her business ventures, turned off the noise, and turned toward her children. Shopping trips, long talks, spontaneous movie nights, all of it became part of a new rhythm. One centered not on public image, but on healing. For Riley, these changes spoke louder than any words. It wasn't about apologies. It was about action. Slowly, cautiously, she began to open up. She shared her fears, the weight of comparisons, the ache of invisibility, the longing to simply be Riley, not Steph Curry's daughter. And her parents listened, not as celebrities, but as mom and dad. The transformation didn't happen overnight. There were setbacks, tears, even moments of silence. But there was also progress. Riley began returning to her old passions. Her sketchbook, once tucked away in frustration, became a sanctuary again. She rediscovered the joy of reading, of laughing, of simply being. Steph and Aisha came to understand that protecting Riley wasn't about hiding her from the world. It was about preparing her to face it, with strength, tools, and above all, support. They redefined success, not as flawless public image, but as emotional resilience, honesty, and love. And Riley, she began to shine again. But not as the little girl from viral videos. This time, she was shining as herself. Sleepovers, birthday parties, quiet walks with friends, these became her new spotlight. A stage where she felt safe, seen, and celebrated not for her name, but for her spirit. The Curry family's journey wasn't just about one child's healing. It was about the power of presence, of real listening, and of choosing family over fame. And for Riley, it marked the beginning of a life lived on her own terms, with courage, identity, and the unwavering love of the people who now truly saw her. In the months following her personal struggles, she found herself surrounded by an unwavering support system, especially from her parents, Aisha and Steph. Their bond grew stronger, and as they watched Riley slowly heal, it became evident how much they had underestimated her strength all along. Riley, once a quiet presence at the dinner table, began to share her voice. She offered her thoughts on everything, from the small details of her day to her bigger dreams for the future. Gone were the days when her presence was shadowed by the weight of the world's expectations. Riley had found her way out of the fog of self-doubt, and for the first time in what felt like forever, her smile was not just a gesture. It was a reflection of a deeper, more resilient spirit. But perhaps the most powerful moment of all came when Riley decided to open up to the world. With her parents' encouragement, she agreed to an interview, an opportunity not just to share her struggles, but to reclaim her narrative. In front of the camera, she spoke with a newfound clarity that left her audience in awe. "I felt like I had to be perfect all the time," Riley admitted, the vulnerability in her voice striking. "It wasn't healthy. But I've realized that it's okay to just be me. I'm not my dad. I don't need to meet anyone else's expectations. I'm just Riley, and that's enough." The honesty that poured from her words struck a chord with everyone who heard them, fans, friends, and even strangers who had been watching her grow up in the spotlight. In that moment, the world saw not just the daughter of Steph and Aisha Curry, but a young woman who had faced her demons, found her voice, and emerged stronger on the other side. For Aisha and Steph, watching Riley speak with such confidence and maturity was more than just a moment of pride. It was a validation of everything they had worked towards as parents. They had always known Riley was capable of greatness, but seeing her take ownership of her story, unafraid to speak her truth, was a testament to their unwavering love and commitment to her. They had shown her that her worth was not defined by the family name she carried, but by the strength and character she displayed each and every day. As time went on, Riley continued to thrive. The pressure of the world's expectations was still there, but it no longer held her hostage. She had learned how to navigate fame while embracing the simple joys of being a teenager. She balanced the challenges of public life with the freedom to express herself authentically, and her transformation became a testament to the power of self-love. For Steph and Aisha, the journey had been transformative as well. Parenting in the public eye had its challenges, but through it all, they had learned how to be more present and compassionate with their children. They had been there for Riley, teaching her that her value didn't lie in the approval of the masses, but in the peace she found within herself. The transformation wasn't just about Riley, it had reshaped them as parents and as individuals. Riley's story became a beacon of hope for countless young people grappling with their own identities, offering a reminder that they didn't have to live up to others' expectations. Her newfound confidence became a source of inspiration, not just for her family, but for a generation learning to navigate the pressures of growing up in a world obsessed with perfection. As Riley continued her journey, her aspirations began to take shape in new and exciting ways. She wanted to create change, to make a difference, and she began to think about how she could use her voice and her platform to advocate for others. Through her art, her advocacy for mental health, and her honest storytelling, Riley found a way to turn her pain into purpose, using her experiences to empower those who needed it most. For Aisha and Steph, seeing their daughter flourish wasn't just a sign of personal growth, it was a lesson in parenting, in being patient, in being present, and in providing a safe space for their children to thrive without fear of judgment. As they stood together as a family, it became clear that their love was the foundation upon which Riley's confidence had been rebuilt. Riley's journey was far from over, but the future ahead shimmered with promise and potential. She had come into her own, embracing the person she was meant to be, and with the unwavering support of her family, she was ready to take on the world, on her terms. This was only the beginning. Grounded in the unwavering love and support of their parents, Riley stood at the threshold of a future that was both uncertain and full of promise. She knew her journey was far from over. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but Riley was no longer afraid. She had learned that it was okay not to have all the answers, to stumble, to falter. Growth, after all, was born from those very struggles. What mattered most now was her resilience, the strength to rise after each fall, the courage to speak her truth and stand tall, and above all, the unshakable love that enveloped her, that had carried her through the darkest days and brightest victories alike. The story of the Curry family was one of transformation, of healing and empowerment, not just for Riley, but for them all. Together, they had weathered storms and faced countless obstacles, and yet they emerged stronger. The fame and success that once defined them paled in comparison to the foundation they had built. A foundation of love, understanding, and unwavering support that would see them through whatever the future held. Riley's transformation wasn't simply the tale of a young girl growing up under the spotlight. It was a universal story, one that spoke to the importance of family, the power of self-love, and the unbreakable strength that comes from confronting personal struggles with courage and honesty. It was a testament to the human spirit, a reminder that, even in the face of adversity, growth is not only possible, it's inevitable. And as they looked to the future, the Curry family knew that no matter where life would take them, they would always have each other. They had faced the storm together, and now, united, they were ready to rise, stronger, unshaken, and prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead.